For years, you gave it your all. You were home, nourishment, comfort, and presence. But let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever wondered why, after so much love given, your son seems to have lost respect for you? Why the look in his eyes, once full of admiration, now feels evasive, impatient, distant? There's something in that indifference that words can't quite capture, but it feels like a slow wound, one that doesn't bleed, but weighs heavily. Maybe you've told yourself it's just part of growing up, or that this is how young people are these days. But there's a quiet cause that many older women don't dare to name, an internal shift that begins when we stop seeing ourselves as figures of respect, when life, with its blows, its sacrifices, and its years, starts to convince us that we don't hold the same worth anymore. It's not something we say out loud, but it settles in. And from that place, without meaning to, we start projecting it. I've walked alongside many women, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, who've reached this same point, feeling like their voice no longer matters, like their words no longer carry weight, like their presence has faded from lighthouse to background. And in all those journeys, I've seen one thing repeat itself. It's not that their children stopped loving them. It's that, without realizing it, they stepped out of the place that was rightfully theirs. That's why this video isn't a scolding or a complaint. It's an invitation to reclaim that place, to recover your presence, to remember that respect isn't demanded, it's embodied. Today, I'm going to show you 4 keys that can make your son look at you differently. They're not tricks or empty formulas. They're ways to fully inhabit your dignity, your strength, your voice. And when that happens, when a mother finds her center again, something shifts in her son's eyes too. You don't have to shout or impose or argue. You just have to return to yourself. These keys are simple, human, and within reach for any woman who wants to reconnect with her truth. Let's begin. The first key to having your son look at you with respect again isn't in the words you say, but in the image you project of yourself. And I'm not talking about your hairstyle, your clothes, or your outward appearance. I'm talking about that inner image, unseen but powerful, that radiates from how you see yourself inside. This is the first key, reclaiming your inner authority. For years, many women our age learned how to serve, to accompany, to support, and along the way, without noticing, they lost their own center. When the kids were young, firmness, boundaries, and guidance were needed. But there was also dependence, tenderness, admiration. Then they grew up, became adults, and little by little began to see us differently. Sometimes they question us, sometimes they criticize, and sometimes they simply drift away. And in that shift, many mothers feel displaced. How can you be seen with respect again when you're no longer needed in the same way? The problem is we often try to reclaim that respect from the wrong place, by lecturing, by reminding them of our sacrifices, by demanding attention. But true respect isn't earned through explanations. It's sparked when someone radiates inner clarity. When they know who they are, what they deserve, and where they're speaking from, and that, dear listener, is felt. Children pick up on it, no matter how old they are. True authority isn't harsh or authoritarian or demanding. It's calm, steady, and grounded. Reclaiming that inner authority doesn't mean raising your voice or laying down conditions. It means believing you are worthy of respect, not putting yourself second, not apologizing for existing, not asking for permission to speak your mind. And if your son talks to you with impatience or disdain, don't respond from fear or guilt. Respond from the calm that comes from knowing your worth. It's not magic, it's presence. It's remembering that you also have the right to be heard, to set boundaries, to be treated with consideration. And when that activates, when you live it sincerely, something shifts in the relationship. Your son, even if he doesn't understand why, begins to soften his judgment. to pause, to look at you differently, not because you demanded it, but because, without saying a word, you're showing him who you are. So before asking your son to respect you, ask yourself if you're respecting your own place, if you're standing in it, if you're embodying it, because the first change doesn't happen out there. It happens within. And what comes next, the second key, has to do with something we've often set aside without realizing it. But if we reclaim it, it can completely transform the way we relate to the people we love most. The second key that can deeply change the way your son sees you has to do with something as simple and powerful as this: speak from experience, not from guilt. Think about it for a moment. How many times in trying to correct, warn, or guide your son have you ended up speaking from a place of pain? Maybe reminding him of everything you've done for him, maybe pointing out how little you've gotten in return, maybe letting out a phrase like, "After everything I've done for you." And it's not wrong to feel that way. It's not wrong to carry that wound. The thing is, when we speak from that place, the message loses its strength. Because it no longer sounds like guidance, it sounds like blame, and respect doesn't grow from blame. It grows from emotional authority, from being able to say what you feel without weighing the other person down with guilt. It grows from sharing real experiences, mistakes made, paths walked, without turning them into bargaining chips. When a mother sits across from her son and says, truthfully and without expectation, "I had to learn this the hard way, and I'd love for you not to have to go through the same," a new door opens. Because now she's not speaking from sacrifice, she's speaking from wisdom. The body feels the difference. The tone of voice changes. And the son, even if he doesn't say it out loud, senses it. My mom is talking to me as a woman, not as a victim. She's showing me her story, not her wounds. And at this stage in life, that is one of the most powerful tools you can reclaim. It's not about denying the pain you've lived. It's about transforming it into something meaningful. And to do that, sometimes all it takes is adjusting your tone, your words, your timing. Avoiding comparisons, the "when I was your age," said with bitterness. Replacing them with something like, "When that happened to me, I didn't know how to handle it. I made mistakes, but today, I've learned something that might help you." When you speak from that place, your son no longer sees you as someone who demands, but as someone who teaches. And even if he doesn't say a word, he starts to look at you differently. Because deep down, we all, including our children, need role models. People who inspire us, not people who blame us. This is a quiet key, but a transformative one. One you can begin to practice at any moment, without big speeches or solemn moments. All it takes is speaking from your truth without trying to impose it. And the next key goes even further. It's not something you say or remind. It's something you embody, something you transmit without words. And it may be the most powerful force to awaken the respect you thought was lost. The third key we need to examine touches something very deep, something we've often normalized without realizing it. The belief that, as the years go by, a mother loses value in her son's eyes simply because she can't do the things she used to. "I'm no use to him anymore. He doesn't need me. He never comes to me for anything important." Maybe you've thought one of those things. Maybe you've whispered them to yourself while he walked past you, answered with one-word replies, or brushed off your advice. But what those thoughts hide is a false belief, one we've heard so often that we end up accepting it, that we're only worth something when we're useful. And that is not true. Your worth isn't measured by what you do or what you give. Your worth lies in who you are, in what you've lived, in the wisdom you carry, in the love you offer freely. Thinking that you no longer have authority because you no longer cook, no longer hold everything together, no longer organize his life like you used to, is to forget that true presence doesn't depend on practical tasks. It depends on connection. Another belief that often hurts us is this one: if I'm kind and ask for nothing, he'll love me more. How often is respect confused with pleasing? Disrespect is overlooked for fear of pushing them away. Harsh words are tolerated to avoid conflict. But giving in doesn't always build love. Sometimes it just reinforces the idea that our boundaries don't matter. And when a mother stops setting clear limits, when she stays silent out of fear, she loses more than her voice. She loses recognition. There's also that deeply rooted idea, I'm older now, he should understand me. And while it's true that age deserves consideration, it can't be used as a shield to avoid change, because respect isn't inherited and it isn't owed because of age. It's nurtured every day, with consistency, with kind firmness, with genuine presence. These beliefs, though they sound logical, are actually emotional traps that weaken us. They make us give up the place that is ours by right. But today, you can choose a different path. You can start believing something more true, more dignified, that your value remains intact, that your voice still carries weight, and that every boundary you set with love is a seed of respect that will come back to you. And in the next part, we'll step into a key that's rarely talked about, but that forms the foundation of everything we've discussed so far. A quiet, intimate practice that transforms the way you relate to yourself, and through that, the way your son begins to see you again, because what he sees on the outside begins with what you feel on the inside. The fourth element is perhaps the most invisible of all, but also the most transformative, reclaiming your inner dialogue. That way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. That's where the respect others perceive truly begins. Not in visible actions or public gestures, but in the quiet murmur of your thoughts. This is the most silent practice, and the most powerful. Maybe no one ever told you clearly, but the way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others will treat you. If inside you there's a voice that constantly criticizes you, downplays your worth, reminds you of what you didn't do, what you can't do anymore, what you no longer are, that voice doesn't stay inside. It seeps into your posture, your gaze, your energy, and even if it can't be heard, it's felt. I remember a woman who told me, "My son doesn't respect me. He talks to me like I'm a burden." And when I asked how she spoke to herself every day, she answered without hesitation, "I tell myself I'm useless now, that I'm in the way, that I just make things harder." Nothing else needed to be said. The body doesn't lie. That inner voice, though invisible, sets the rhythm of your entire life. That's why this key is so important. Start paying attention to that internal dialogue, observing it honestly. Not to correct it right away, but to understand where it comes from. Maybe it's the voice of a demanding mother, a culture that only values youth or years of accumulated silence. But whatever it is, it doesn't have to keep directing your story. The practice is simple but deep. Every time you notice yourself speaking harshly to yourself, pause, breathe, and say something different. Something as simple as, "I'm still here, I'm still me, I'm valuable just as I am today." This isn't about repeating empty phrases. It's about planting new seeds and doing it again and again until your body starts to believe it, until your gaze starts to shift. Because when that inner voice becomes more compassionate, more fair, more loving, something realigns in your energy. And what once came across as fragility becomes dignity. You don't have to say it out loud. Your son doesn't even need to know. It's enough that you feel it. It's enough that you believe it. And from there, everything begins to fall into place. Your words come out differently. Your gestures carry new strength. Your presence radiates something that doesn't need to be explained. Because respect, when cultivated from within, blooms outward. The next key will speak to something inevitable. The moments when this journey becomes difficult. Because it's not always easy to sustain what we've begun to transform. But there is a way to keep going without giving up. And that's what we're going to share next. At this point, there's something we can't ignore. Even if you've begun to find your center again, even if you've practiced speaking your truth, started setting boundaries with love and caring for yourself from within, you may still run into a silent wall. Resistance. Not just resistance from your son, who may not understand your change right away, your own resistance too. Because when a woman has spent years staying quiet, giving in, dimming her light so she doesn't bother anyone, turning that light back on can be terrifying. Fear that it won't work, fear that it's too late, fear that the other person won't respond the way you hoped. The doubt creeps in. What if there's no way back? What if my son never sees me with respect again? Or guilt shows up? What if I taught him not to listen to me? What if I stayed silent for so long that he doesn't take me seriously anymore? You might even feel exhausted. What's the point in changing now after so many years of living like this? And here's what I want to tell you. From the deepest place, all of that is normal. The fear, the guilt, the doubt, they're part of the journey. They don't mean you're failing. They mean you're waking up. That something inside you is shifting. And that always feels uncomfortable. There's a moment in this process when you might feel more fragile than ever, like you've taken off an old armor and suddenly everything hurts more. But it's right there, in that vulnerable space, where something real is born. Because you're no longer reacting. You're choosing. Your son may take time to notice. He may resist. He may even reject this new version of you. But that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means something is changing. Because when a relationship has been unbalanced for years, restoring it takes time. It takes consistency, but above all, it takes love for yourself. There may be days when you feel alone, misunderstood, drained. But remember, you're not starting from zero. You're coming back to yourself. You're remembering your strength. And every time you hold yourself in that new space, even if it feels small, you're planting seeds of respect, not just for yourself, for the generations to come. So if today you find yourself in that place where nothing seems to change, if your son hasn't responded yet, if this effort feels invisible, don't stop. Sometimes respect is cultivated in silence, and it blooms when you least expect it. As we come to the close of this journey, we're going to look at everything you've lived through with new eyes, not as a goal achieved, but as a possible rebirth, because what you've begun to reclaim isn't something you'll lose again. It just needs to be sustained with truth and with love. What you've just heard isn't a magic formula, nor a guaranteed path to change anyone. It is, above all, an invitation to remember your strength, your dignity, your deep worth. Because a son's respect isn't regained through pleading, correcting, or giving in even more. It awakens when you begin to respect yourself from within. Maybe for years you convinced yourself it was too late, that your voice no longer mattered, that everything you gave went unnoticed. But today, here, you've touched a different truth. The truth of a woman who can still transform, who can still make a difference, who can still be a guiding light in this stage of life. Not through demands, but through presence. What we've shared here isn't technique. It's living gestures, quiet choices that, if carried with you, can restore what once seemed lost. And you don't have to do it all at once. It's enough to begin with one thing, a shift in the way you speak to yourself. A single sentence said with conviction, a pause before giving in, a no spoken with respect. That's enough to begin. Picture a simple moment. You pouring yourself a cup of coffee calmly, quietly, unhurried. As someone who honors her own time. Your son walks in, and you don't rush to serve him, you don't apologize, you don't shrink yourself. You just look at him and stay centered. That small gesture is the start of something new, because in that moment, he begins to understand, without you saying a word, that his mother still has a voice. She still has a place. She still deserves to be seen. And from there, slowly, the relationship begins to shift. Not instantly, not with applause, but it shifts. Because your transformation doesn't depend on him. It depends on you, and your future self will thank you for it. Today, I want to leave you with a phrase, one that can represent you if something in this message spoke to your heart. Write it in the comments if you feel this is your moment. Today, I stand. Not as a sign of hardness, but as an act of love, because standing in your worth is the first step toward being seen as you deserve. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a sister, a friend, a woman you love, share it. Sometimes, one word arrives right on time, and it can change an entire story. Thank you for being here, for giving yourself this moment, for choosing yourself. And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. On screen, you'll see 2 more videos that can walk with you on this path, because you deserve more than company. You deserve respect, clarity, and truth. Always.